Hey y'all, Eli with Alchemy Custom Weaponry here. Welcome back to the channel and happy 45 Friday. That is, of course, if you're watching this on the day that it comes out, which is Friday. If not, happy whatever day it is to you. So we're going to continue our study of the marketing guns. And this is just an attempt for me to show you some of the guns we have in marketing. Maybe you can get a little bit of idea of what you like, what you don't like, and different options on different guns. And so that's really all this is about. And I'm also going to try to walk through some of the options presented on the pistol, so maybe you have a little better idea how that translates on other guns as well. So today we're talking about the Alchemy Prime Compact. The Prime Compact, pretty interesting gun, and one that I feel in our concealed carry focused society is not one that gets talked about enough. So we're going to talk about it a little bit today. This is one of the best summer carry guns that we offer that I think actually you can get on the market. It really pulls a lot of different ideas and a lot of different features that are really pleasant in a good shooting gun, but also, of course, a good carrying gun. So let's talk about it. Let's kind of go back a little bit, dial back the clock, okay? As the concealed carry market really starts growing, and this is probably in the 1980s, okay? People are realizing, well, of course I carry a 5-inch gun all the time. I got a Commander that I carry a lot too, but people are also realizing that, not everybody can carry a 5-inch gun. Some people don't want to carry a 5-inch gun. I'm not necessarily saying those are my people. I'm just saying that those people are out there. So what happens is Colt begins investing in a small version of the 1911. This would result in about 1985, I want to say, in what we know as the Officer's ACP, okay? The Officer's ACP, the idea is pretty cool. The execution is not necessarily the best thing that Colt's ever done. The problem with shortening the 1911 is it really it's one of those tropes that you say, don't mess with God and John Moses Browning. Well, this is them messing with God and John Moses Browning. When you shorten that gun up so much, what you realize is there's not a lot of dwell time at the rear end of the recoil cycle. And especially at the time when the revolution of 1911 magazines hadn't really happened yet. In the mid-80s. It was starting to. People were realizing that magazines were a big deal on 1911s, but they really hadn't started to give you the magazine options we have today. And so without a really good magazine where it can shove that round up quick enough, they really struggled with, feeding reliably. In fact, this is a very similar, I'm just thinking about this, very similar issue to like the Luger P08, right? The toggle action works so fast that if you don't have an extremely strong magazine spring, sometimes it won't be able to properly feed the next round going into the chamber. Sort of the same thing. There's also some other issues, one of which being that a 3.5 inch gun and a shortened frame is difficult to shoot well, and it's difficult to enjoy to shoot. As someone, listen, y'all, listen. I'm like the BDSM of shooting. I love heavy calibers. I love big bore handguns. I love stuff with a little bit of recoil, okay? Lets you know you're alive. But these guns are just not fun to shoot. Officer guns, traditional officer's guns, are just not a fun shooting gun, especially in 45. So what a lot of folks happened was, of course, as they shot the gun, it's kind of beating themselves to pieces, and you'd end up with like limp wristing the gun. Very common on officer guns to have people have issues related to limp wristing because it's just wearing them down, just something that's out there. So a little bit later on, I don't know exactly when, I want to say the late 90s, okay, but don't hold me to that. The late 90s, the 1911 world kind of said, hey, well, there's some components we can begin to mix up, right? And so what happened was we put a Commander slide on an officer style frame, of course with elongated dust cover to make up for that slide and frame difference. And that resulted in the CCO, which stands for Concealed Carry Officer, which is kind of interesting. They call that the concealed carry, even though it's a little bit bigger than the traditional officer's ACP. But it's what they call it. So that's what we offer as kind of our smallest gun that we offer, and that's the CCO. Now the CCO gets overlooked a lot, and it's easy to understand why. One might say, well, why don't you just get a Commander? The Commander has a slightly longer grip. The Commander obviously have the same length barrel and slide, And that's certainly a point to make, right? However, it's difficult to overlook just how well this shortened, even if it is a little bit, this shortened grip frame carries, especially in light clothing. This particular gun actually, is a gun that I found is an excellent gun to carry in a place like, for instance, my parents have a place in the Keys. So when I go down to the Keys, this is definitely a gun that I take because it's easier to conceal. I like to conceal in the appendix. This does not stick out from, now I get it, I'm a wide guy, right? So, keep that in mind. But this doesn't stick out from my silhouette, so if I'm wearing a lighter shirt, it won't really catch this angle as much as with a traditional Commander. So I enjoy the heck out of these guns in 9mm specifically, and really you won't hear me say this often, but 9mm specifically, this is a badass pistol, a badass carry gun. I really enjoy shooting this gun in 9mm. Now let's talk about this particular gun. Of course, let's back up just a hair. It is available in 45. The 45s are great, don't get me wrong. I do think with the 45, you will because of the shortened grip, you will somewhat experience what the original Officer ACP people did, in the sense of the gun's just going to beat you up a little bit. It's certainly not a gun you'll want to spend all day shooting, but not really that big of a deal. If you're kind of in that thing, if whips and chains excite you, that's not a bad choice. But let's talk about this particular gun. So let's start out, firstly, it's DLC. Matte DLC, in fact, I think we just lay DLC so damn well. I mean, it is just a really, really good looking finish. It's a dark finish. If you're kind of going for that kind of subtle look to the gun, you can't beat it. We DLC the barrel, of course, as well. All the small parts. So as I mentioned before, I carry this gun a lot in the Keys, and there's really been no issues as far as, like corrosion, rust, any of that. Of course, if there's going to be a place the gun's going to rust, the Florida Keys are it. And I've not had any issues with carrying this against my body, mind you, in that environment. So moving on, we do have a flush cut and crown barrel. That's just a good look. A lot of people get tore up about, if it does or doesn't have a flush cut and crown barrel. I think it's a good look on a gun. I don't necessarily think it's appropriate for every gun. In fact, I really like on a traditional gun, no flush cut and crown barrel, just because I like the profile of that. However, on a gun like this, flush cut and crown barrel makes a lot of sense. It also has the HRT cut. We've discussed this. It really did serve a purpose. If you're a left-handed person, it serves a big purpose. If you're not, in my opinion, the HRT cut is more of an aesthetic thing. So it's cool to have, and it's certainly something that is a quick note to say, hey, that might be a custom 1911. The gun features only a single-sided safety. I would probably have done an ambi if I spec'd this one out originally. Of course, it has the Delta hammer, which I don't think we have to get into that. You can tell for a fact I didn't spec this gun out myself. Another kind of telltale is this does have a short trigger. Now, the short trigger for me is too short, especially with flat mainspring housing. I really sink my finger, if I'm shooting the gun fast, I sink my finger in a little bit too quickly, or too far, excuse me, on the short trigger. Is it serviceable? Absolutely. Is it my favorite? No, it isn't. But if your hand, or specifically your fingers, are a little shorter, definitely something to consider, okay? Definitely something to consider, and that's really the kind of the joy of the 1911 is between the different grips and the trigger lengths and mainspring housings, you can really find something that fits your hand really well. You'll notice this doesn't have a mag well. So on the Prime Compact, I kind of like not having a mag well. This is sort of a you can kind of, there's some argument to be made here, of course. I like not having a mag well because I can get flush magazines, and that's a pretty short profile, okay? You can see my hand is barely hanging off, okay? And I have about a medium to extra large glove sized hand. I mean, I don't have a massive hand, but I ain't got a small hand either. And you can tell that it's hanging off a little bit, but not really that much, and this is incredibly serviceable still. Well, the magazines we send with the gun are the trips. So these are pretty cool because they're cut down 10-round magazines. Notice I said cut down, okay? It's going to say 10 on there. Do not try to put 10 rounds in this magazine, okay? 9 rounds only. 9-round magazine, cut down from a 10 round. But this is a 9-round magazine. So you have a compact with a 9-round plus one in the chamber, 10-round gun. That's pretty handy, especially as slim as the 1911 is. That's a hell of a carry gun. And so you'll notice, though, it does stick out. So if you're someone who says, I'm going to stay with these magazines, okay, it might make sense to do the Magwell because, you know, at this point, your profile of your gun is going to be sticking out that far. If you're someone who, like me, is going to be looking for flush, flat bottom magazines, then this really starts to shorten up the grip quite a bit and gives you a really concealable handgun. Now, I do carry these in, most of the time if I'm carrying this gun, I carry it in a tier 1 concealed sidecar rig in the appendix, okay? Because if I'm carrying this gun, it's hot as hell, so I just carry a Kydex rig just because it makes everything a lot easier. And so I carry this kind of like this, right? So this is my spare magazine, which is nice because, of course, it's not like you're using a large magazine that doesn't have a stop like this one, so you don't accidentally over-insert the magazine, which is a problem sometimes if you're using too long of the magazine for the grip frame. You'll over-insert it, you can damage your ejector. Just trust me, you definitely want something that has some sort of stop to prevent it from over-insertion. So yeah, so that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what you're working with on this pistol. One note I do want to make about the Magwell in particular, as of right now, as of the time this is filmed, we are currently using an old like S&A style magazine. So it has a little bit more of an angle, okay? A little bit more of an angle there. We have not gone to the stanchions on these like we have on the Commanders and the 5-inch guns. Now, if you do want that back end beveled, that can be done. It's going to cost you a little bit more. So if you do want a Magwell on your Prime Compact, or of course your Prime Elite Compact, just make sure if you do want that kind of bevel there, make sure you let me know and we'll discuss kind of the options there and give you a little bit better idea of a quote on what that's going to cost you. With that, I think that's everything I have for you on this gun. It's a great carry gun, great summer carry gun. I've enjoyed carrying it in the summer. My hard chrome gun, my matte chrome Commander, is back up at the factory getting an ambi safety put on it, and so I haven't really had that summer carry gun that I usually have. So this has been a really good stand-in when I've needed something that's, you know, durable for obviously the conditions I live in or visit, of course, and then you still get kind of brownie points because it is a 1911. So anyways, with that, make sure you check out the Prime Compact. Great freaking gun, awesome gun. Especially, and I'm telling y'all, the 9mm gun shoots really well. So thank y'all so much for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day. And remember, always carry cocked and locked.